If members who are attending remotely wish to speak, they should use the raise hand icon on screen. I will ask if all who wish to speak have done so before closing the debate. But at that point, it is your responsibility to ensure you attract my attention, even by cutting in verbally. Otherwise, you may miss your opportunity to speak. And those that are joining remotely should ensure that your cameras are on all the time, and ensure that your mobile phones are switched off or on silent during the meeting. Mr. Moody will take us head.
Thank you, Provost. Provost Bissett.
Present.
Deputy Provost Falkirk.
Present.
Councillor Aitchison.
Yeah.
Councillor Anslow.
Present.
Councillor Binney.
Present.
Councillor Bowes.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
She has burst pipes at the moment, so she's dealing with that. Then she's got to join when she resolves that situation. Go on.
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. We have apologies from Councillor Buchanan, Councillor Bundy.
Present.
Councillor Colley.
Present.
Councillor Deacon.
Present.
Councillor Devine.
Present.
Councillor Flynn.
Present.
Councillor Forrest.
Present.
Councillor Garner.
Present.
Councillor Hannah.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Yep.
Councillor Kerr.
Yep.
Councillor McCabe. Councillor Meikle-John.
Present.
Councillor Murtagh.
And shut.
Councillor Nimmo.
Present.
Councillor Patterson.
Present.
Councillor Patrick.
Present.
Councillor Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Ritchie.
Present.
Councillor Robertson.
Present.
Councillor Sinclair.
Present.
Councillor Spears.
Present.
And Councillor Steinbank.
Present.
Thank you.
And would you like to say something about motions or amendments, Mr. Moody?
Yes, thank you, Provost. And it's just to advise members of the council that we have had intimation of amendments to some items from both the Labour group and the Conservative group, which I think may have been distributed more widely among members too. But it's just to say we do have paper copies of these which will be distributed shortly to allow members who are present to have a further opportunity to look at these during the course of the meeting, and they will also be emailed to those who are joining the meeting remotely. So it's just to let you know what is being distributed at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Next item of business, agenda item 3, minutes and information bulletin. Oh, my apologies. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes and information bulletin. Point A, minute of meeting of Falkirk Council held on 28th of September 2022, pages 6 to 17. Can we agree that minute? Agreed. Any questions arising from that minute?
Yes,
Councillor Spears?
it's just to say I think we were misinformed at the last council meeting regarding Blackness Primary School concerning the parent council, where both the education department and the leader of the administration said they didn't have a parent council, which is clearly not correct. I think we should rectify that there is a parent council in Blackness Primary School.
Thank you. Would you like a follow-up on that from Mr. Naylor? Or are you just making the point?
Well, I'm making the point, but I think, not personally to me, but to the parents of that rural community that who were told they didn't exist, should be recognised that they do exist.
Thank you, Councillor Moody.
Thank you, Provost. I think maybe just to make the point that we're still on the minute of the 28th of September council meeting. I think the issue which Councillor Spears is raising may arise in relation to the last meeting of the Education, Children and Young People Executive, which will be available to raise at the time we're at the volume of council minutes which contains that particular minute. But I think it's helpful at this stage just to to have heard that point.
Okay, thank you. 3B, minute of special meeting of Falkirk Council held on 27th October 2022, pages 18 to 29. Can we agree that minute? Thank you. 3C,
Provost,
yes,
Provost, sorry.
okay.
I'm trying to get my hand up, but it's no going for some reason.
Well, you
I've been looking at the minutes. Sorry, it's Councillor Ritchie.
Aye, Councillor.
I've been looking at the minutes and there doesn't seem to be anything under the rolling action log from last time regarding the Champney Junction. There's none on the minutes this time about that. So it's just to see if I can get an update on what's going on with that.
You're referring to the minute of the special meeting of Falkirk Council held on
Well,
27th?
it's no actually on any of the minutes about it. There's none. There's a bit. Myself and Councillor Aitchison actually asked Mr. Benny, and it's just to see why there's nothing logging on it about it, and see if we can get another update.
Okay, thanks,
Because there's
Councillor
nothing on the
Ritchie.
log at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moody?
Provost, I think Councillor Ritchie is correct in saying there's nothing specifically in the minutes which would be a basis to raise this. My recollection is that the issues with the Champney Junction may have been discussed at the executive rather than at the meeting of the council. It may be helpful to hear from Mr. Benny if he can recall if there is a further report to be coming on that, and whether that would be coming to the executive rather than to council.
Okay. Mr. Benny?
Through you, Provost. Apologies, I'm having some technical issues, so I've missed most of the conversation. But with regards to the Champney Junction, my recollection is that off the back of the previous discussion, I think was at executive, there was a full answer given by Mr. Kettrick, and I think that was followed up with a sort of a briefing of some description. There's no update on that coming forward to council until we hear from the Levelling Up Fund announcements from the UK government, and if that bid is successful, then a report would come to council to update on the success of that bid or otherwise. Hopefully that helps.
Is that a good enough answer, Councillor Ritchie?
When are we expecting that update back? Because I'm sure we got told at the meeting that this first came to knowledge that the money had been given to Denny from the junction, that it would be round about December. Is that still the case, or is it going to be later?
Through you, Provost, we don't have a detailed deadline from the UK government on when these announcements will take place. Clearly, there's been quite a lot of changes within the UK government, and I think that's delaying a number of announcements of this sort. But our hope would be that it would be this month or next month.
Okay, maybe you could give Councillor Ritchie an update at some point.
I've got one more question, please, Provost, regarding this. The work's supposed to take place before the 31st of March, the end of the financial year. Now, is things in place for the work to be done, or are we going to have to wait till this money comes in to see if we get it, to see if the work's going to get taken forward, or is things in place for the work to be done, whatever, because we'll have to find the money out of roads to get it done for the 31st of March.
Back to you, Mr. Benny, for a short answer.
Through you, Provost. I'd have to get back to you on that, Councillor Ritchie. I don't have that information to hand.
Okay, thanks very much.
But you can assure me this work will be done by the 31st of March to the Champney Junction. that's been programmed in for this year, that the money was there to be done this year.
Through you, Provost, whilst money was allocated in the capital plan, I'm not convinced that the works were scheduled for this financial year. I'd need to check that point and come back to Councillor Ritchie.
I think Mr. Benny's answered that question, and I'm sure he'll get back in touch with you, Councillor Ritchie. We need to move on. The next item is agenda item 3C, volume of minutes, volume 2, 22-23. Any questions on the volume of minutes? Councillor Spears.
Is this when you want me to ask my question regarding? It was with great concern when I stated at the meeting that the Blackness Primary School Parent Council had got in touch with me, but the people didn't just get in touch with me. They got in touch with a lot of other people who were in attendance at that meeting and knew perfectly well that this Parent Teacher Association was very valid and took great concern and worked very hard for the primary school. My concern here is that we were told, misinformed by the Education Department, I wouldn't say deliberately, that they had no knowledge of this Parent Teacher Association. And I think we owe not just the parents, but the people of that community an apology, because they do exist. But saying that, there's always a positive comes out of every action, and I'll have great pleasure speaking to the reformed community council tonight, and it's certainly geared that community, a very vital rural community within our district that we are all meant to represent, has spurred them back into action. And I wish them every success. Not to give away too much of what I'll say tonight, but I wish them every success and to go forward. And they'll certainly be recognised within this district. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Spears. Mr. Naylor, would you like to respond to that, please?
Just to say, and my colleague Mr. Greenhorn has already corresponded with Councillor Spears on this point. At the time of the meeting, the information that officers had was that there wasn't a sitting parent council in existence. We subsequently found out that that was not the case and that there was a parent council. So as Councillor Spears says, happy to acknowledge that error on the day of the last Education, Children and Young People Committee.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3D, information bulletin. Any questions on the information bulletin? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. I've got quite a substantial number of questions on the bulletin, Provost. The first one I'll start off with is funding to Falkirk Delivers was significantly reduced. What are we doing to replace any lost funding? That's on page 20 of the bulletin, paragraph 4.4. It seems that the council's own funding will cease in March 23. Is this correct? Where is the replacement funding going to come from?
Thank you. Mr. Benny, would you like to respond to Councillor McCabe's question?
Through you, Provost, just to update that the money that we're talking about here was money linked to the sort of COVID recovery position. So it was one-off funding provided by the Scottish Government that has been distributed, and there is no further funding on that front because it was a time-sensitive amount of money given to support the recovery from COVID.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. Is that a satisfactory answer, Councillor McCabe?
Well, it's an answer. It's not satisfactory.
Okay. Next question.
Page 20, paragraph 5.1. Where is the document an action plan stroke vision for the town centre. Where is that document? It's quoted in the...
Mr. Benny? Town centre master plan?
Can I be clear that we're talking about the town centre master plan and not the town centre action plan?
What was it, Councillor McCabe?
It's a town centre action plan.
My apologies, town centre
No, it's
action
fine, Provost. It's under section 5.1 Falkirk Town Centre. Following a 2-day workshop in the town centre, a vision for the town centre was developed and agreed, along with an action plan. Where is the action plan?
Mr. Benny?
Through you, Provost, the team will have the action plan. I can get a copy of that shared with elected members if that would be helpful.
I think it would be helpful when you refer to it in reports. I think it's very helpful that we've actually seen the document. Can I just ask, in furtherance to that, when was the Arts Centre proposal first introduced?
Mr. Benny?
Through you, Provost, I'm not clear on the question. Are we talking historically over the last decade, or are we talking about in the past 12 months?
I'm looking for something which tells me there's an action plan following a 2-day workshop. When was that 2-day workshop? You've come up with an action plan. I'm asking the question, when did the town hall first appear, or does it appear in that action plan?
Provost, perhaps having been involved with those particular meetings, I think that takes us back to 2018-19 when that particular action plan was developed. Along with our town centre partners, and the executive at that time did have copies of the action plan, and certainly in the previous papers, if Mr. McCabe cares to have a look back at those papers, would have the action plan attached, along with a number of iterations of that and updates on it. But it was done in collaboration with our town centre partners and businesses, which was developed. I think the master plan is still to be developed for the town centre, and that's a piece of work that will be done going forward. But the one of the key parts to that master planning exercise will be the new town hall and the location of it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Meikle-John. The next question, Councillor McCabe.
I'm still not satisfied with that question, that answer, Provost. The very idea that we are given information and we have to then go and try and search for where this information is, whether it's today, whether it was last week, or whether it was in 2018 or 2019. If we are given information, we have to be given all of the information. I'm not here to spend my time running about trying to find past reports for 3 or 4 years ago.
Provost, I'm sure that had Mr. McCabe asked prior to the meeting, the officers would have been able to give him a copy of the action plan for the town centre.
This falls into something that I took up with Mr. Perry, why we get documents like this appearing within the bulletins. This should be coming in front of full council. This shouldn't be just passed here for somebody to pick it up.
Next question, Councillor McCabe. Could you tell us the page number and paragraph?
Yes, I will do, Provost. Apologies, I hadn't printed this out, so I'm having to look at it on my screen here. Yeah, it's paragraph 5.2. How much money has been invested in Falkirk Town Centre during the past 10 years? Whether through Town Centre Capital Funding, Falkirk Towns Limited, the National Lottery Heritage Funding, have we got any idea? I have a rough total here, something like £1.816 million. That includes repurposing, car parking, public realm, Falkirk Towns, Wi-Fi, footfall centres, heritage feasibility. So we have something like £1.816 million previously invested. What else has been invested in Falkirk Town Centre?
Mr. Benny, would you like to take that?
Through you, Provost, I'm not in a position to answer how much has been spent on Falkirk Town Centre over the last 10 years. I'll need to work with finance colleagues to try and draw that information together. Happy to do so if that's what elected members believe is a valuable exercise.
Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Provost. Still on 5.1. How much has been set aside for engagement of an architect urban design consultancy? And before answering that, what brief has been prepared to allow the compilation of a development framework master plan?
Through you, Provost, officers have progressed a brief and secured consultants within a 50k budget to deliver a development master plan for the town to set a framework for the new town hall and secure hopefully Scottish Government funding to support this.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Okay, Provost, thank you for that. Page 25. Paragraph 9.2. As you can see, it's to do with Denny Town Centre. It tells me here that there was a £7.9 million regeneration project of Denny Town Centre. There was far much more spent on Denny Town Centre than the 7.9. It ranges anything between 11 million to 15 million pounds, depending what report you look at, what paper you look at. It's something in the region of 11 to 15 million pounds. Accuracy of reports is what I'm after here. Can I ask how many of the upper floor units are currently let?
Through you, Provost, I don't have that information to hand. That would be something my teams would be able to provide.
Okay. Are you happy to get that?
That is fine now, Provost, yeah. Paragraph 9.4. A site was sold. The site was sold for £10,000 for a principal vacant site within the town centre. Is this considered best value? Did the district valuer arrive at this figure? And I'll point out, by the way, £10,000 is less than the annual rateable value of one of the retail units in Stirling Street.
Mr. Benny, could you comment on that, please?
Through you, Provost, I don't have detailed information about the district valuer to hand. Again, I can get my teams to look into that.
I would appreciate that coming back to me.
Thank you.
For all this point of information, it was the district valuer that set the price at the time. I can remember the report, and the report is there for anybody to look at as well.
Thanks, Councillor Garner.
I look forward to receiving a copy of that. Thanks. Do we have any information? It's a wee bit of a speculative one. Do we have any information on what movement there has been on the proposal for the new convenience store, if any?
Mr. Benny?
I don't have, through you, Provost, I don't have any update beyond what's in the information bulletin.
Thank you.
Moving on to section 9.5, Provost. Do we have any update on that? What opportunities are envisaged for the retained part of phase 2?
Did you catch that, Mr. Benny?
Through you, Provost, officers are still considering what's the best approach to take and working on business cases and with colleagues across the council to see what would be the best use of that.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any idea? It's been sitting for 5 years.
Through you, Provost.
Okay.
I'm not keen. I'm not sure it's helpful to speculate on ideas that haven't been fully developed. I'd rather come forward with proper business cases that are robust, given the level of interest in this area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. Page 28, section 13.1. What stage are we at with the Falkirk, with the town hall project, given that all town centres will continue to be adversely affected by current financial factors?
Mr. Berry?
Through you, Provost, the current stage we're at is we've put a call for sites out. Landowners in the Falkirk town centre area are aware of our interest, and it's a process whereby sites will be alerted to us, and then we can assess those sites and come back to council with the recommendation on which one would be the best for us to take forward.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Councillor McCabe?
And just to close out on that point, how's the community consultation going regarding the closure of the town hall?
Mr. Berry?
Through you, Provost, it's not a consultation on the closure of the Falkirk Town Hall. It's a common good consultation on the accelerated demolition of the site. The consultation is ongoing, and we'll be bringing a report back to council next year.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe?
Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on the information bulletin? No. Oh,
Provost,
my
sorry,
apologies, Councillor Nimmo.
can I just maybe raise a procedural point? All the questions that are getting asked so far are very interesting, but I think it would maybe help other elected members and officers as well if they could have been made aware of the questions beforehand, so that we all could have had the benefit of a full answer, rather than I'll need to go and check. I fully appreciate that questions can come at the spur of the moment, but I would appreciate even more the fact that if we could get a full answer at a council meeting. So they need to be aware of the questions in advance. I think that would help everybody. Thanks, Provost.
That's a fair point, Councillor Nimmo. I think we've raised that a number of times that prior to the council meeting, if you have got questions on the rolling action log, information bulletin, try and submit them to an officer before, so you'll get probably a more robust. Councillor McCabe.
Provost, I agree entirely with Councillor Nimmo there. This was something that I broached with Mr. Perry, where I'll quote here to Brian. Hello, Brian, some questions. Why do we receive something as important as the town centre regeneration update as a bulletin? This is the type of information I feel should come in front of full council. The fact that we only received this, less than a week or so beforehand, given that we have an agenda in front of us for the full council. The questions that I raised there were actually forwarded to Mr. Perry, who in turn forwarded them, as far as I'm aware, to the director. So the director did have some time to assemble some answers. I agree wholeheartedly. He did not have enough time. But that's problems. You're quite right, Councillor Nimmo. Through you, Provost. I think Councillor Nimmo is quite right. It's something to do with our procedures. We need to get sorted out. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Spears.
Just to come in, the timescales regarding our procedures, elected members can receive this sometimes less than 3 days before the meeting if it's posted out.
Provost,
sorry, I'm speaking. This is a big body of work.
But this is questions on the information bulletin. Your questions are not on the information bulletin.
It's questions on scrutiny.
It's not.
Scrutiny is a vital part of this council.
This is questions on the information bulletin.
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. It isn't really on the information bulletin, Councillor Spears. So
it's a question on scrutiny, and scrutiny should be the
scrutiny.
byword of this council.
Yes, but we're not on scrutiny. And it's not an information bulletin, Councillor Spears, so we'll park that for a minute. Item of business. Agenda item 4, rolling action log, pages 30 to 33. Does anyone have anything they want to raise? No? Okay, thank you. No. Okay. Next item is agenda item 5, referral from Executive Treasury Management Interim Review 22-23. And the report was considered at the Executive Committee on the 4th October 2022. The Executive agreed to refer the report to Council for consideration. And so Mrs Templeman will be speaking to the report and the recommendations. Mrs Templeman.
Thank you, Convener. The report that's presented today is the interim review of Treasury Management activity for 2022-23 against the approved strategy. And this interim review is a requirement of the Treasury Management Code of Practice. As you've said, the report was considered by the Executive already back in October, and that meant that because of the dates, the report was written before, for example, the 23rd of September mini-budget and the subsequent impact on the economy and all the changes that have happened since. So much of the information that's presented in section 4.1 of the report is now out of date. So I'll just provide members with a brief update on the economic outlook. So paragraph 4.1.3 noted that the meeting of the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee on the 22nd of September was expected to raise bank rates. And in the event the rate was increased by 0.5% to 2.25%. There's since been a further rise in interest rates in November to 3%. And the next meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee is tomorrow. And most people are expecting a further increase on the interest rates, with further rises expected in 22-23. Now, fundamentally, those rises by the Bank of England are to try and combat inflation. And some economists believe that inflation has now peaked and peaked in October at around about 11%. And we've seen some news today suggesting that the inflation has reduced very slightly. And so that may mean that the interest rate rise tomorrow is held at about 0.5%. But we obviously won't know until we hear the announcement tomorrow. Members may also have read in the news that the UK economy grew by 0.5% between September and October, which was a little unexpected. But I think it's important to note that in the 3 months to October, the economy shrank by 0.3%. And economists are still of the view that a recession will last probably for around 5 quarters and that there are very difficult times ahead. As you can imagine, business confidence and consumer confidence is low. All sectors are facing high energy prices, high inflation, high borrowing costs. So we have to think about what that means for our interest rate projections. And as I've mentioned already, it's expected that the Bank of England will raise the base rate again, with further rises in 22-23, although there is now debate on what the peak will be. Previously, there was an expectation that we would hit 5% for base rates. Some economists are suggesting that might not be the case. But that means in the coming year, short-term borrowing is likely to be relatively high, with the variance between long-term and short-term borrowing unlikely to be as significant as it has been in the past. Sorry, I'm getting quite a lot of echo. So it's a little bit difficult. If it's difficult to hear, I apologise. In terms of long-term borrowing, there are big swings in the gilt markets at the moment, but the longer-term borrowing rates still remain relatively high. The table at the top of page 39 of the report shows a 50-year PWLB rate of 3.1%. Since that report was written, that PWLB rate this morning is now about 4.4%. And of course, that's a big difference when large sums of money are involved. Our Treasury advisors are estimating the gilt rate will increase again in Q1 of 2023 before starting to fall back. And so that this is a volatile area for us. And page 40 of the agenda, paragraph 4.2.8, refers to the borrowing requirements and decisions around long-term and short-term borrowing. It remains likely that short-term borrowing will be marginally cheaper and that's what we would look to do in the first instance. but we will take advantage if there are any significant reductions in the PWLB rates. Page 41 provides information on the investment strategy, and members will be aware that we take a very prudent approach to investment. We are seeing some higher returns, and the rates on our money market funds, for example, have increased. But we do have to ensure that we have easy access to our funds, particularly as we get near the end of the financial year, our available cash balances start to reduce. And finally, in paragraph 4.6.1, I just noted that we held Treasury Management training in August this year, but I would just want to highlight that if members feel they would like any further training, if you could just get in touch and let me know, and whether that's a wider session or if there's any particular points that members want me to go through on a one-to-one basis, I'm happy to do that as well. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Templeman. Councillor Meiklejohn, would you like to make any comment on behalf of the executive, and do you have a motion at all?
Provost, I'll move the recommendations in the paper that council's. Well, there is a dreadful echo in here. I don't know what's happening, but yeah, I move the recommendations as in the paper that council consider Treasury Management interim review. It was taken to the executive and discussed at length, but I do appreciate Mrs Templeman giving us a further update, as that we are in a very volatile financial climate right now, which makes our Treasury Management strategy really important for us. As has been said, this is a critical time for Treasury Management with the significant challenges in the volatile financial climate and the challenges around materials supply, cost of living, and the variable borrowing rates, which inevitably the council has to use at this time in order just to manage our cash flow through the council. So I welcome the report that's come forward. I have a lot of confidence in our finance team to guide us through what's a difficult time, but make sure that due diligence is done and the best has been done to manage our finances. Short-term borrowing is going to be the key to going forward until such time as the financial markets settle down and give us that longer sustainability. So it does mean that there's going to be a significant period of work for our teams in making sure that we do get the best possible financial deals for the council going forward. So on that, Provost, I'm happy just to move the recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Meiklejohn. Do you have a seconder?
Provost, it's Councillor Browse here. Can I, for all that the Leader of the Council said, can I formally second and reserve the right to come back in, please?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah, do you happen to have an amendment or on this one?
I have no amendment, just I would reiterate the thanks to Amanda for her, as ever, clear report on some very difficult information and the update, which we very much appreciate being given to us in this way. It's very unpalatable, and yes, we all recognise what the problems are going to be going forward. So thank you for all your hard work, Amanda, and thank you for clearly being able to explain some really difficult material to us.
Thanks, Councillor Hannah. Councillor Kerr, do you have an amendment?
No amendment, Provost. Just reiterate what everybody else is saying about Amanda and her team. This is probably the hardest financial situation the council's probably ever been in. Whether it's inside factor, outside factors, or world factors, we are in a position where the financial situation has left us with unprecedented decisions to make, and hopefully just with updates for Amanda and the team gives us a better understanding of where we stand, Provost. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Spears, do you have an amendment?
Thank you. I'd like to thank Ms Templeman as well for her interim review of the Treasury Management function. I think what we're talking about here is strategy, and we've got to say we want to see a strategy. We're coming up to very difficult times, if we're not really in the middle of them already, regarding the council budget. The Scottish budget, Mr Swinney will declare tomorrow, so we need to find out more about long and short-term borrowing as much as we can. And I realise it's a fluid situation and not within the gift of this council. But as we come up to our own budget, which I think we will be calling the umbrella budget because the rainy day has arrived. So we need to get clearer vision on what reserves are there, how we can use these reserves, because the rainy day has arrived. And we need to look at an umbrella budget so that the difficulties for our constituents and for this district are an absolute minimum. Thank you.
Thank you. Now open up for discussion if any members want to make a comment on this. Okay, thank you. Nobody's want to make a comment on this, so we'll move on to agenda item 6, tackling poverty in Falkirk, additional support to low-income households. The report is by the Chief Executive and it's pages 49 to 78. Mr Laurie.
Thank you, Provost, and very good morning to all of you. So this report is a follow-up to the report that came to the Executive in June of this year. It sets out the work being done right across the council, but also in the Health and Social Care Partnership and indeed within the third sector to support communities in tackling poverty, what is of course a very challenging time. So I think a lot of good work has been done. I'm very grateful to officers across the council for all that they have done and the work that's planned in terms of moving this agenda forward. I'm particularly grateful to Sally Buchanan, who's brought all of this together in the report in front of you today. So the report itself, it sets out the background in terms of the current challenges, which I think are familiar to all of you. And then it sets out both the actions we've taken to date in relation to tackling poverty and the further actions planned. And these cover a wide range of issues as set out in the report. So the Household Support Fund, supporting benefits take-up, the use of the Go card, poverty awareness training, promoting pensions credit, the availability of support, promoting the use of libraries in terms of spaces that people can use to help limit energy costs, the work being done in early years, the support from the employment training unit, financial support surgeries, the work of the comms team and advice hubs, and a number of other issues. And as I say, it touches on the work of the Health and Social Care Partnership and also the third sector as well. There's two substantive matters for consideration by the Council today. That relates to recommendations 3 and 4 in the report. So the first of these is about the proposal to add a further 190,000 to the Household Support Fund, and the background to that is set out at paragraph 6.2 and 6.3. And the second one is the proposal that the free school meal and bridging payments should be continued at the current funding levels for this month, December 2022, and then revert to the Scottish Government eligibility criteria for the remainder of the financial year. And the details in relation to that are set out between paragraphs 6.4 and 6.14. And Provost, myself and a number of other colleagues on the call would be happy to take questions in relation to the details in respect of these. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Meikle-John, do you have a motion?
Yes, thank you, Provost. I'll be moving the recommendations within the report, but I just want to take a moment to thank officers for their hard work in developing their strategy and the implementation of it. It is one of the Council's key priorities, and the Falkirk Plan demonstrating a really joined up approach across the Council delivers so much more within the district than those who are to those that are most impacted most financially right now. And in doing that, I don't just mean statutory partners, I mean our third sector as well. But I also want to recognise the work of all our teams, particularly our debt team right now, who are doing a huge amount of work to support people in greatest need, and it can be a very emotive, and I'm pleased that we do have support networks for our staff who are dealing with some really difficult situations just now, because they're doing a massive amount of work and doing very well, levering in additional funds. The update report just shows how far and wide the services have gone to reach as many people as possible and to maximise their income and help support quality of life. Since the last report, the Household Support Fund reopened and the demand for the fund has exceeded the expectations, highlighting that there is a need out there. First round of the supported 1,213 households over 13 weeks. That's compared to 1,583 households over 8 weeks for the most recent fund, and that's just over 500,000, which was forecast to last till the 31st of March. However, it's clear with the levels of demand that we need to top up the fund, and the additional 190,000 is very welcome in doing that. And paragraph 5.2 shows the difference that the fund can really make. I think by actually hearing some of those lived experiences, it helps to bring home just the difference that has made to people's lives, helping to purchase essentials like winter clothes for their children, and encourage engagement with support agencies to look at making sure that people are getting benefits where they're needed. So it's not just purely around food and fuel. Warm and welcoming spaces is something that we have actively participated in, along with a host of community and third sector. We've expanded our support services map, which is really helpful to be able to see and identify where those warm spaces are. It includes information across the area and where you can access the warm spaces, and that's continuing to be developed, including in conjunction with our third sector partners, and will be added to over the coming weeks. We need to make sure that where people can access these spaces, we're building in an additional value to that approach as much as possible, basing it around activities and giving a purpose for the visit, not just labelling these as warm banks, to ensure that everyone feels they're able to use them, but they can also be able to access, whether that just be a friendly face, cup of tea, some help and advice and signposting, and visiting those. Our libraries are playing a crucial role in that right now. Also provides a lot of information on what's going on and what's planned across the council services and our health and social care partnership, in particular the additional resources to take up of the benefits and in-kind support. And the Think Poverty sessions are raising awareness and understanding of poverty has been very welcomed by our staff, particularly those at the front line, but also those that may not be directly involved with benefits advice, but able to direct accordingly. Communications plan will continue to be used to keep promoting where people can go for help and advice, and the strategic action plan on income maximisation will help to bring the council back into by the end of the financial year to look at how much we can put that together, and continue to fund that. By using the contacts across the community planning partnership as much as possible. We don't sit back on our laurels. It's not about patting backs here. It's about getting our sleeves rolled up and moving on from that first tranche of work and looking at what more we can do, because we must continue to strive to do that wee bit more to make sure that nobody is left behind. As we move forward, there's continued work ongoing around the poverty awareness training. And there are plans to further extend that going forward with monthly sessions that allow further staff within the council and indeed extending that beyond to support others, to be able to give them training to our community planning partners. And again, we always look towards planning our Challenge Poverty Weeks. The other areas it's become quite critical is around information and gathering information and data to be able to target more effectively with a couple of additions around our financial health check and support and the financial health check tool that will be able to allow us to gather some information and be able to track people so that we know those that are actually taking up the funding that's available through benefits and know those that aren't, and perhaps be able to provide more additional support to them. So going forward, as we're talking about awareness raising, ongoing communications, new household support officer resources will be in place very shortly, better measuring of the impact of the financial health check, and a lot of work going on at council to maximise benefits and uptake of in-kind support, such as the free bus travel, and make sure all of that is captured for the future, and looking at developing a financial health check going forward. What we will need to seriously look at as we go into the budget round is funding in the household support fund, and making sure that that is something that we're likely to need to be ongoing for some time yet. We're going to remain in recession for at least the next year, and therefore people are still going to find it very difficult. So there's going to be some difficult decisions have to be made in order to be able to continue to top up that fund. We need to look at savings from other areas, and that will be something that will need to be considered in the next round. So on that, Provost, I would just reiterate my thanks to all our staff for the work that they're doing in this area, and I'm happy to move the recommendations in the report.
Thanks, Councillor Meikle. John, do you have a seconder? Councillor Colley?
Yes, thank you. In seconding this report, I'd like to thank officers for it. The breadth of activity by staff in our council, our health and social care partnership, and by partners in the NHS voluntary sector and communities is extremely important, and it's so critical to citizens of our area experiencing poverty, which is being exacerbated by the cost of living crisis. Everyone's shoulder to the wheel has never been needed so much, certainly in decades. Poverty, quite frankly, shortens life. The recent rapid health assessment of the population health impacts of the rising cost of living in Scotland by Public Health Scotland found that depending on interventions, it could increase mortality by as much as 16% and reduce life expectancy by as much as 2.1%. For illustration, in areas with greatest deprivation, this could mean an extra 192 deaths per 100,000 of the population. Recently, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation in its Poverty in Scotland report found that 44% of people were heating their home less than needed to reduce costs, 18% are skipping meals, and a third are cutting back on social connections to save money. As with mortality, these rise for those with the lowest financial security, and across the piece, more women report cutting back the very basics of comfort in life. And in the same report, people of all ages talked about how negatively their physical and mental health was being impacted by the rising cost of living. This crisis is storing up problems not just over winter, but as mentioned earlier, for the future health of our nation. It's therefore vital that we put our collective energies into doing what we can do to help within the budgets we have. And I welcome the wide variety of financial and practical support that has been developed. It is, for example, absolutely the right thing to do to allocate extra funding to the Household Support Fund to ensure that we can do what we can to meet rising demand. And I welcome the work to ensure that older people and families with children are aware of the financial support that could be available to them. For example, the Scottish Child Payment, the doubled Scottish Bridging Payment, Child's Winter Heating Assistance, Disability Benefits, Pension Credit and more. Collectively, this work by our staff and the staff and volunteers of our partners and the Scottish Government is literally helping hundreds of thousands of our citizens of all ages. Given that poverty and health inequality are so closely linked, I welcome the work of Falkirk Health and Social Care Partnership in providing over £700,000 in funding through the Health Inequalities and Wellbeing Fund, supporting groups across the council area to deliver support to people. Not only this, but funding community-led workers based in GP surgeries to help connect folk to support, including much needed financial advice and support. I also welcome the work across our services to provide warm spaces for people to relax, use the Wi-Fi, read, study, meet others, be that in our library or leisure centres or through any of our partners. None of us like the idea that anyone in our community needs to have a space to go just to keep warm without cost, but it is needed, and I am thankful that it is being developed. In my own ward, as in most wards, our community groups are also providing such support, and many are offering meals and other supports over the Christmas period. For example, the Hope Hub in Denny offer a drop-in every day from 10 to 12, where folk can drop in for a free coffee, a chat and somewhere to keep warm. It's also worth noting our local food banks and food pantries. Demand remains strong and their vital role cannot be understated. Yet, with cost of living biting, donations are reducing and their own costs are increasing. And as councillors, we can do our bit to support organisations in our community to raise awareness of what they offer, but also to use our profile and links to raise awareness of some of the supports, financial and practical, outlined in this report, to ensure that anyone who is eligible for things like the Scottish Child Payment or Pension Credit or the Household Support Fund knows about it and how to apply. It is without doubt one of the most challenging times our communities have faced, particularly those with the lowest incomes. But across the piece, there are few who are not impacted in some way. But I am confident that our officers are looking for every opportunity they can find locally with partners and nationally with the Scottish Government to try and meet as best we can in the circumstances. Tackling poverty is and should be, without doubt, our highest priority.
Thanks, Councillor Colley. Councillor Harnett, do you have an amendment?
Thank you, Convener. Provost. I have got an amendment that has been circulated to all the other parties in advance of today. So I will, and it will now be put. It will also be put up for the public, and it's every councillor has a copy of it. We welcome this report. We think it is very, very useful, but I think we should go just a little bit further. I was glad to hear Councillor Meikle-John's support of the work of the staff, but the point that she made about us not patting ourselves on the back, I absolutely agree with. However, I think it is worth agreeing to give a pat on the back to the staff who have gone above and beyond the call of duty over a long, long period of time, and who have provided advice and support in a variety of ways. So my additional recommendation 5 is about saying I think we need to recognise the range of work that officers have undertaken, and the important area of work in terms of ensuring that everybody within our own services and within the third sector sees the problem of poverty as being everybody's problem. The problem of poverty is not just for those people who are the poorest and most vulnerable. We all need to recognise the issues and think in terms of every decision we make, think about the impact that it's going to have on people with poverty. So I thank the staff for that good work and for the information that's in the appendix to the report. In the 2 recommendations that we want to add, recommendation 6 and recommendation 8, we think it's important as a long-term worker in advice services myself, as most people know I was, I read this report and thought how very modest the authors have been in terms of the impact of the work that they've done. It does read as a very extensive report, I know, but I think they could have patted themselves on the back a little more. The advice work that's done both by our own staff and by the third sector, as it says in the report, has delivered, for every £1 we have spent on advice services, £13 has been delivered in additional income for people who are rightly entitled to those benefits. Now, I think that's quite a response. I'm sure even Amanda, with her financial hat on, would agree that a rate of return of £13 for every pound spent is really very, very impressive. I would also point out that it's better than the Scottish average, which is actually only £12 per pound invested in advice services. So I want to say thank you very much to the hard work that's been done. And I think it's important that we recognise that impact that it has on the pockets of people. And remembering that, as Councillor Colley has said, there are much wider impacts of the problems of poverty on health and well-being. That money in pockets really makes a huge difference to a lot of different parts of people's lives. In terms of our recommendation, additional recommendation 8, I think it's also important that we identify and recognise the impact that that additional money has in the local economy. I've done a lot of work in the past and based on this area of work, and there are various research studies that show for every pound spent in the local economy, the actual impact on the local economy is far greater than that £1. I've actually seen studies that can show that it's up to 4 times the impact. And that has an impact on jobs. It has an impact on the well-being and the wealth within the community. And I think that's really important. When extra money goes into the pockets of people who are on low incomes, they don't put it into stocks and shares. They don't put it into ISAs or savings. What they do is they spend it in the local economy. If we want to regenerate our local economy, I think it's really important that we take account of that money that is circulating in the local economy and look at the ways in which we can increase it. While we welcome the additional money for the support fund, the extra £190,000, that £190,000 gives £190,000 in the local economy. A similar amount of money would give £13 for every single pound spent in advice services. And we need to look at the ways in which we are spending our money to maximise the impact it has for people. So that is the reason for our recommendation 8, simply asking our officers to go away and look at the research and come back with some information about the impact that that extra money has in the local economy, as well as the benefits it has for the individuals who are living hand to mouth. Now, we need to remember that inflation at the moment is over 11% for the past year. That has a tremendous impact on the ability of individuals on low incomes to feed their children, to feed themselves, to keep their houses warm. And in this very, very cold snap that we're in at the moment, I think the cost of fuel is high on all our minds. In terms of our recommendation, our additional recommendation, or sorry, our amendment to recommendation to delete the change to the free holiday meals. I think at this particular juncture, it's not the right time to be reducing the assistance to the lowest income families in terms of food for children. All we are suggesting here is that this is continued for the current financial year, and that in the budget we can look again at whether that should continue over a longer period of time. It's interesting that a cut to help for low-income families should be included in a report which is otherwise all about improving the lot of our lowest income families. All it would mean is the cost of continuing that enhanced provision through the Easter break. It's not a huge ask, and the ways in which it could be funded is already included in the report. And so I would ask that councillors accept that we continue the existing level of support until the end of the financial year. Overall, this is an excellent report. Overall, I'm very pleased at the work our officers have done and that the third sector has done. And the final recommendation that I want to refer to is asking officers to provide a report to the Council on ways in which advice services across Falkirk, across the Falkirk Council area, could work with education, health and social care to undertake a wider income maximisation campaigns. I recognise and we can see through the report that a lot of work is already being done with education, with children and families and with health and social care to promote take-up of benefits, to promote awareness of poverty and poverty problems. I think we have to remember that in the current cost of living crisis, it's not only the poorest who are hurting, it's people on middle incomes as well.
Yeah.
And there are often people on middle incomes who are actually entitled to benefits and don't realise it. They think I'm on a middle income, therefore I couldn't possibly qualify for these extra helps. The COVID crisis over the past 2 years has caused a huge impact on people with mental and physical health problems. There have been problems related to difficulties that the NHS has experienced in terms of diagnosis, in terms of treatment. It is undoubtedly the case that the benefits that are available for people with mental or physical health illnesses or disabilities need to be maximised. Those benefits can make a huge difference to people who are suffering from the effects of the past few years. And I would like to see us promoting the take-up of those throughout the community and not only focusing on the lowest income people, but taking it out to the wider community and to those on middle and higher incomes. Because people with disabilities and illnesses do have additional costs. So I would look forward to receiving, if the Council sees fit to pass this amendment, would look forward to seeing a report on a wider income maximisation campaign. So finally, I would just say thank you very much to the staff who have done all this work and to the third sector organisations who have done all this work. We all know that there's a great deal more to be done, and we will be there to support the work that is going on.
Thanks, Councillor Hannah. Do you have a seconder?
Provost, I'm quite happy to second the Labour amendment. I'd just like to echo everything that Councillor Hannah has just said. Tackling poverty, quite rightly, is a #1 priority, and that's how it should be, especially in the current financial climate that we find ourselves in. We should be doing all we can to help support local communities. But we'll have to bear in mind that we're about to engage in a new budget process, and there's potential for significant cuts to come through that, which is going to affect our local communities. There's the potential for closing school swimming pools, which is going to impact on our local communities, Grangemouth High School being one of them. That's earmarked for potential closure, and I'm sure the public will object to that in due time. I've already had complaints from constituents in Grangemouth regarding the potential closure of the Grangemouth High School pool, and I'm just wondering what support mechanisms are going to be put in place to help relocate the user groups for the pool. Okay, we've got free bus travel, and people will be able to travel to different places, but there's just not enough buses on the roads. There's not a sufficient service for the public to rely on. So if we're talking about closing facilities, how are these people who might not have a car, How are they expected to get to the remaining facilities? It's quite simply just not good enough, and it doesn't help the public. But as I said, I'm happy to second the Labour group amendment. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Nimmo. Councillor Kerr, are you giving notice of an amendment?
Sorry, is that me you're addressing?
Yeah, Councillor Kerr. You're on mute, Councillor Kerr.
I'll pass you on to Councillor Bundy, Provost.
But he doesn't have to move his amendment at the minute, just to give notice of
Yes,
it. Really.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Provost. I'd be happy to move my amendment just now. It is.
No, you don't need to move it just now, Councillor Bundy. It's just to give notice of it.
Okay, I'll just give notice then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spears, are you giving notice of an amendment?
No.
Okay, thank you. That was easy. So we'll now just open up the debate for discussion. So if anybody's got any questions, just put your hand up.
Okay. Surely a statement. I think we need to realise, you know, that this is additional support for low-income households. Who does that encompass? Councillor Hannah was very good to mention middle-income people. If you're slightly above the threshold, you're in need now. I would say the majority of people with families and the majority of senior citizens are in need now. If you have a slightly bigger house, you're in need now because heating these extra rooms is a lot more expensive. So to continually look at one section and no embrace across the board everybody else, and I'm sure the SNP budget in Holyrood tomorrow, where they want to further tax them, is not going to be a great deal of help. You know, sorry, I quite liked Councillor Colley's statement, but it sounded a bit like a blitz statement during the Second World War. You know, we're in a desperate situation where people need help, but the help needs to come from the top. They need to look at the companies that are making vast profits, for energy companies that are raking it in at the moment. And quite frankly, to keep trying to trickle up for the bottom, one goes against the Conservative government's policy, trickle-down economics. And what we need to do now is to cut the cost instead of trying to prop up a system that is clearly not working. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Spears. Anyone else want to come in? Councillor Binney.
Thank you, Provost. I just really wanted to say, just add on from what Councillor Colley said, it's a very good report. There's a lot of detail in it, and the council staff have been absolutely marvellous, maximising income and that, and we do need that these days, because there's an awful lot of people out there that don't have their full income, and obviously that could help them. But I think it's also very important to say it's about our communities as well, tackling poverty in Falkirk. We can't forget about them, the work that they do. They do that quietly, they do that humbly. And before many years ago, before there was all these structures in place and people helping them, the communities themselves helped each other. So it's all the groups, all the charities, all the churches out there, all the volunteers, all the members of the community that help each other, either donate, give their time. There's hundreds of little groups there that actually help people, and get them out of poverty one way or another. It's not just financial, it's maybe about learning them a skill, giving them a bit confidence, giving them a bit time. They all make a difference in tackling poverty in Falkirk. And without that, Falkirk Council area would be a poorer place. So I'm sure we'd all like to thank them, especially at this time. At this time, they're doing marvellous work. This is exceptional times, high inflation, and we're near the time of Christmas when families are doing without heat and things for their children. So I think you'll all agree you would like to thank everyone in our communities that's helping each other to tackle poverty, to get them out away from that. And this is the time of Christmas spirit and kindness during these exceptional times. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Bunny. I think we would all echo that sentiment. Anybody else got any comments they want to make? Councillor Colley.
Yeah, it was actually some points of clarification, the issues that were raised in the amendment, but also when people were talking. Just to note that the Easter holidays fall outside this financial year. They'll move into the next financial year. So decisions that we make just now will potentially impact on what we can do next year. So we do need to think quite carefully. And I think we look at the implications around bridging payments, but I would note to all members about encouraging families across the district who are eligible to apply for the Scottish Child Payment, which is £25 per child. I'd also like to note that the work around income maximisation campaigns in across the piece, including in health and social care, is work that is done as standard. And whilst I recognise what Councillor Hannah is trying to do, and appreciate that, actually some of this work is already ongoing through assessment processes. So picking up people with disabilities, picking up carers, and ensuring as part of that system that individuals are getting the support through and know about their rights through that assessment process. And you know, whilst I really I agree on the issues around local economy multipliers, we know that people are more likely to spend that their money locally. But I do wonder whether we actually need to be spending time. Our officers would not be better being out doing this work rather than spending time on doing more reports, whilst I recognise entirely what Councillor Hannah is saying.
Thanks, Councillor Colley. Anyone else want to come in? Councillor Spears. Councillor McCabe, my apologies.
Thanks, Provost. We've got three points basically. First one is really a question. Page 50, 2.1, paragraph 4. Was there an EPIA carried out on the question of school meal and bridging payments? A note from 8.7 that a quality poverty impact assessment was carried out for the Household Support Fund. Was there one carried out for school meals and bridging payments?
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. Mr Naylor, would you like to take that one?
No, there wasn't. The information in the report is around the free school meal entitlement funded by the Scottish Government and the additional funding that Falkirk Council has made available to an extended cohort following the COVID period. It's a relatively new thing that any children have been provided with a meal payment for the school holiday periods. Prior to COVID, those entitled to free school meals got a free school meal when they were at school, i.e. during term time, and this is a relatively recent addition. And the background to this is that during COVID, Falkirk made a payment of £3.50, not £2.50, but they made it to not only those who qualified for free school meals, but also to those who qualified for clothing grant.
Thank you very much, Mr Naylor. Appreciate that. Page 51, paragraph 4.5, section 3. We're making great. I just find the hypocrisy here a bit. I struggle with it. We apparently provide free access to pools at a cost of £180,000. How does this impact the budget when we're proposing to close 4 of those pools?
Mr Naylor?
Within the SPR report to executive last week, there were proposals to close 4 of our secondary school swimming pools, and I think the bit in this report that's been referred to is access to our sport and leisure facilities. So that would principally be the Mariner, Grangemouth and Bowness Recreation Centre. So the two things are slightly different, Councillor. What will happen in the early months of 2023 is a report will be brought back to Council as agreed last week at Executive regarding the impact of closing 4 secondary school swimming pools.
Thanks, Mr Naylor. Clarified that a bit for me in the fact that the free swimming access that we provide, that does include the 4 school pools as well. Is that correct?
That's not my understanding, Councillor. The 4 school pools, the majority of the public access to those is for swimming clubs.
My missus is not a member of any swimming club that accesses Denny High School. I think she pays for it. I was just wondering. Okay, move on. I suppose it's echoing Councillor Nimmell's point earlier on, where page 63, section 620 and 621, we're closing these pools. And yet within the comments here, the best way to support those in need is to maximise uptake of Go Card memberships. We support people to remain fit and active. Clear lines between increased depression, anxiety and stress stemming from this. Again, the question is, what are the impacts on mental health here? Have we assessed the knock-on effects of these cuts that we're proposing?
Mr Naylor? Of course, we haven't taken any decision on closing swimming pools yet, have we?
Yeah, so what was agreed at Executive last week was that further work will be done and a report will be brought back regarding the impact of the decision, any decision that will be subsequently taken to close those 4 swimming pools. So that would include an assessment of the impact on the community and also recommendations for where activities that would have taken place in the 4 school pools will be redirected to.
Thank you, Mr Naylor. Appreciate that, Provost. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. Anybody else got any questions?
If I may just pick up on Councillor.
Already, sorry, Councillor. Provost. Councillor Stamer.
Thank you, Provost. Just building on Councillor McCabe's question there, just a question for Robert Naylor. Obviously, we didn't make any decision at last week's executive in relation to the swimming pools, but as Robert is and various officers and elected members will know, we have started receiving emails from specific groups. We started receiving a lot of contact from specific groups worried about their eventual future. So if we factor in the promotional campaign in relation to the Go Cards, I believe that is at 5.2 seconds. Within the report, the Go Card promotion, how is that going to be factored in to the promotional activities taken in relation to the Go Card? The fact that there is already extreme concern from our communities about whether they would be able to access these facilities if they did sign up for the Go Card. Thank you.
Mr Naylor?
I think the two things are separate. One is for those eligible, they're provided with a Go Card that gives them free access to facilities. That would continue for that cohort that are eligible. What might be different is that there might be fewer facilities for them to access free. So as I said a moment ago, Council will at some point during 2023 take a decision about the future of the 4 school swimming pools, and as I've also mentioned, there will be an assessment of the impact that is likely to have on the various user groups of those facilities and the wider community in the event of their closure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Naylor. Any other questions? Councillor Murtagh?
I promise I didn't raise my hand on that.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies. Would you like to sum up, Councillor Meikle-John?
Thank you, Provost. It's a shame that such a positive report on helping our communities has been drawn into a premature debate around closing swimming pools, with a variety of misinformation floating around. So I think we should really put that debate for another day. But I would just just highlight the work of the officers and the teams across Falkirk and the work that they are doing to help those in poverty. I would want to just highlight that in moving option 4, which is within Councillor Hannah's amendment, as opposed to option 2, where there is mitigation around the Scottish Social Security's child payment and bridging payments as mitigation, there will be an adverse impact on another part of the service in early years to the tune of £100,000. That could have wide-ranging impacts, and rather than just a small knock-on effect. At some point we knew we would have to revert to the Scottish Government's free school meals criteria for the provision of cash when our young people aren't at school, because it impacts significantly on the council's financial situation. We have managed to be able to fund it this far with the COVID resources that we've had. Unfortunately, that's been depleted, so we're going to have to make the decision at some point anyway. But at a time where there are significant payments available through the Scottish Government, I think there's a reasonable mitigation there to be able to support that. So hence the reason we will not be supporting the amendment. And my colleague, Councillor Polly, has also very eloquently detailed a number of aspects that are within the report that come in the amendment, so I'm not sure I really understand why there's a need for those. We have officers that are working very hard, and I would much rather have them out in the front line delivering services and actually increasing the incomes of individuals. When we have national bodies that are able to gather information that we can use. Therefore, I don't think that we should be spending time doing that. I know that National Library Services are collecting a huge amount of information, including around benefits that we can tap into, and I would, rather than spending time doing that, I would seek that our officers look to pull on other resources. Do recognise that those on benefits have the most disposable income. Now, that's not because they are wealthy or well off, but they do tend to have cash to spend compared to others that don't have cash. Their finances are tied up in other ways. So they do make a significant difference to the economy, and particularly locally, we know that. Therefore, by maximising the uptake of benefits will indeed help the wider economy of the Falkirk area. And that's all very welcome, but what's most important is that we do the work that we need to do to increase awareness, make sure people have access to good quality advice and information, and support to claim the benefits they're entitled to, and that's what we must continue to focus on going forward. So we will be sticking with the report as it is, Provost. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Meikle-John. Can I just ask at this point if we want to take a 10-minute recess for all groups to have a look at all the amendments that have been circulating on this one? Okay, thank you. We'll make that 15 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. And has anybody got any comment to make? Any of the group leaders following the recess? No. Okay, then we'll go to the vote on the motion and Councillor Hannah's amendment.
Thank you, Provost. And the motion consists of the recommendations contained at paragraph 2 of the report. And the motion is moved by Councillor Meikle-John and seconded by Councillor Colley, against which there is an amendment which has been circulated, moved by Councillor Hannah and seconded by Councillor Nimmo. Provost Bisset.
Amendment.
Deputy Provost Balfour.
The motion.
Councillor Aitchison.
Amendment.
Councillor Anslow.
Amendment.
Councillor Binney.
Motion.
Councillor Bowes.
Motion.
I'm not sure if Councillor Brown has joined us yet. Councillor Brown. Councillor Bundy.
Motion.
Councillor Colley.
Motion.
Councillor Deacon.
Motion.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Flynn.
Motion.
Councillor Forrest.
Motion.
Councillor Garner.
The motion.
Councillor Hannah.
Amendment.
Councillor Kelly.
Amendment.
Councillor Kerr.
The motion.
Councillor McCabe.
Amendment.
Councillor Meikle-John. Councillor Murtagh.
Motion.
Councillor Nimmo.
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson.
Amendment.
Councillor Patrick.
The motion.
Councillor Redmond.
Amendment.
Councillor Ritchie.
Amendment.
Councillor Robertson.
The motion.
Councillor Sinclair.
Motion.
Councillor Spears.
Amendment.
And Councillor Steinbank.
The amendment.
Provost, there are 16 votes for the motion. There are 12 votes for the amendment, and the motion is carried. So the motion remains. The substantive motion is moved, against which we now proceed to the next amendment to be moved by Councillor Bundy.
Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Provost. The Falkirk Conservatives believe that good food is essential to addressing poverty and reducing inequality. Scotland has a great history of producing good food, and I'm not talking about deep fried Mars bars, but I'm talking about Scotch beef, Scotch lamb, Arbroath smokies, Stornoway black pudding. And the council has 3 priorities, and we can build upon Scotland's great tradition of great food and fulfil our priorities at the same time. And that's why the Falkirk Conservatives are putting forward this amendment so that the officers explore collaborating with the Soil Association Scotland on their Food for Life programme to provide food to our young people, meeting the standards of the programme and supporting better outcomes for health, our economy and the environment. Adopting this programme would help empower communities throughout Falkirk. It would ensure that local businesses are used in providing food that's used in schools. It would also help reduce inequality. Good food is better for people's health and it promotes education. And it also helps with the green transition. Local supply chains are much better for the environment than shipping from afar. Over half of Scotland's local authorities are signed up for the Food for Life programme, and I believe that Falkirk has the potential to be left behind if we do not become one of the authorities that are signed up to it. As I've said, good food helps now, it helps improve people's food, but it also helps the future. Data shows from numerous studies that good nutrition, it helps with education, it helps with alertness in the classroom, it helps with study out of school, sports out of school. And when budgets are tight, you don't come across many opportunities to reduce inequality in a way that could be cost neutral. The Soil Association Scotland have told me that the bronze awards of their programme could be cost neutral. And that's why the Falkirk Conservatives are asking officers to seek and explore how we can adopt the Bronze programme and see if it is cost neutral for the council. And if it is, hope that these conversations will lead to collaboration. We want to maximise Falkirk's potential. We believe that providing good food and nutrition is one way of doing that, and that's why we are putting forward this amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bundy. Do you have a seconder?
I've seconded it. The Provost with the right to come back in.
Thanks, Councillor Kerr. We'll now just open up for a discussion if anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask. Oh, Councillor Meikle-John, thank you.
Thank you, Provost. I think the administration would be happy to accept this amendment. It fits very well with sustainable food. It fits well with sustainable procurement, but also community wealth building, and all of which are within the council's priorities and aligns very well with the council's priorities. I think it is right, though, that we look to get a report back to explore this a bit further and to look at the various implications, because indeed there may well be potential costs associated with this, although I do take what Councillor Bundy says, the bronze level would potentially be cost neutral, but I think there may well be choices that we would have to make by way of mitigation, but that may well be for good reason. So I'm more than happy that we incorporate this into the motion, Provost. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Meikle-John. Any other comments? No, Mr. Moody.
Provost, I think if we could just have confirmation that the seconder of the motion, Councillor Colley, is also content to incorporate the terms of Councillor Bundy's amendment, then we don't have a division then among members.
Yeah, content with that.
Agreed.
Sorry, is it open to questions? No?
So the motions are agreed and carried.
So it's not open to questions, no?
Well, we did open it for discussion earlier on, Councillor Spears. Thank you. Next item of business, agenda item 7, Falkirk Town Hall closure voluntary arts support, and it'll be Mr. Bennett speaking to us, and it's pages 79 to 85. Thank you.
Through you, Provost. At the council meeting in September, it was agreed that officers would bring back a report that updated on the progress that had been made to support performing groups to find alternative venues while the Falkirk Town Hall was closed for the new Falkirk Town Hall to come forward. The report in front of you outlines the good progress that's been made with 9 of the 12 groups successfully relocated. We're investing in stage improvements at Grangemouth Town Hall and Bowness Town Hall that should improve their facilities for the groups to use. We're planning to relocate technical equipment from Falkirk Town Hall into other council venues. We believe that the discussions that we've had to date suggest that the funding that was indicated in the original report will be enough to support the requirements of those groups. And finally, the report seeks delegated authority for the manager in this area to be able to increase the amount of money that's available to the voluntary groups, depending on a kind of best value case and need, and that if we're able to flex between those two funds, that we're confident that we can mitigate the impacts of the closure. So myself and Leslie are happy and available to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Benny. Councillor Meikle-John, do you have a motion?
Portfolio holder, Councillor Garner.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Provost. And I'd like to thank Michael and Leslie for bringing this report forward and all the work they've done in the interim period. This paper updates Council on the progress that has been made to date to relocate the upcoming year's hires following the decision to close Falkirk Town Hall. This work is largely complete with a number of lets relocated, with many to the Grangemouth or Bowness Town Halls. The largest production scheduled for 2023 and possibly the most challenging to accommodate was Falkirk's Operatic Society's production of Shrek. I'm pleased to see that it appears that St Mungo's or Ladbert High will be a suitable alternative and we have the funding set aside to support them with the additional financial costs they will need to pay compared to Falkirk Town Hall. The members will recall that a budget of 10k was proposed to be allocated to assist voluntary sector companies with the unanticipated costs due to the relocation. It is recommended in this report that discretion is given to the manager to use this fund and to increase it, if necessary, using the 50k external match funding pot to support local groups. I welcome this report and thank officers for the work they have done to support our local groups since the decision in September. I'm happy to recommend the report and officers are here to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Garner. Do you have a seconder?
Provost. Happy to second and reserve the right.
Thank you. Councillor Harner, do you have any amendment?
No amendments. Reserve the right to ask questions later.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr, do you have an amendment?
No amendments, Provost.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spears, do you have an amendment?
No amendment, but reserve the right to ask many questions later.
Okay, so we'll now open up for discussion. Who would like to come in? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. Page 80, 4.1. Can we correct the report? Again, Council agreed the early closure of the Town Hall, not the permanent closure of the Town Hall. Now, I realise you'll say I'm being semantic here, but I'll have this thrown back in my face 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line when somebody will refer to this report saying we agreed that we permanently close. We didn't agree to permanently close. It's an early closure. Could I have that corrected, please?
Mr. Benny, would you like to pick that one up?
Through you, Provost, happy to have that corrected. I don't think anyone's in any doubt that the report that came forward in September agreed to the closure of the existing town hall and instructed officers to bring forward a report on a new Falkirk town hall.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. I appreciate that. Page 81, 5.1. It's just a statement here. To admit that there are, and I quote, no other purpose-built performing arts venues within the Falkirk Council area is a dreadful indictment of our decision to close the town hall early without a new venue being in place as we had previously promised. I'm going to quote a message that I received at 5 to 11 this morning from Barbara Bryceland, who's currently not appearing in the pantomime at the town hall. That's the heating away again. More cancelled shows. You couldn't make this up. More disappointed Falkirk kids. Apparently they never ordered fuel to top up the heating. How embarrassing is this for the council?
Revisiting the debate, that isn't the subject to this particular.
How embarrassing is this? This is to do with the town hall. Anybody feel embarrassed? The fact that we've
Councillor McCabe, if I could just come in, it says basically it's about the voluntary arts support. That's what it's about. Yeah. It's not about the actual closure of the town hall and the rights or wrongs of that.
Okay, fair enough, Provost. I'll end that there. Page 83. Of the patrons noted in the table, at least 6 of them will incur additional costs. Are commercial lessees to be left unsupported and unfunded?
Through you, Provost, Can I just take the opportunity to correct the statement about the boiler at the Falkirk Town Hall? The boiler is malfunctioning. It isn't that officers have failed to order any fuel or anything like that. In fact, the situation that we have at the Falkirk Town Hall at the moment only evidences the poor state of the building and the fact that it is no longer able to sustain productions. It's precisely the very same warning that officers made to elected members in September, that it was proving increasingly challenging to put on performances, and we're in a situation now where we're really struggling to make sure the building can operate to deliver what it needs to. So thank you for the opportunity to correct that matter. But with regards to supporting groups, my view is the report makes clear that funding is available, and officers are seeking permission to be able to use that funding to support groups who previously used the Falkirk Town Hall. So I'm happy to answer any more questions about that, but I'm not aware of a situation that's pressing whereby a group is seeking alternative locations and we're not in a place that we believe that we can help support them.
Yeah, Councillor McCabe.
No, Demi Provost.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Councillor
Really a
Taylor.
point of information. I understand the consultation is still ongoing regarding the Falkirk Common Good Fund in the Town Hall, but this documentation says the decision's already taken. Have we had a result from that consultation?
Mr. Benny?
Through you, Provost, as I said before, the Common Good consultation is to do with the early demolition or accelerated demolition of the Falkirk Town Hall. It is not a consultation on whether the Falkirk Town Hall closes or not.
I must say that I have had a lot of inquiries. It's quite difficult on the website to vote on this matter. You have to go through various pages. It's not really been made simple and easy to use.
Provost, again, that's not the subject of this report.
Through you, Provost, if Councillor Spears wishes to forward me any of the inquiries that he's had, I'm happy to work with those residents to assist them to fill in the consultation effectively.
Okay, and let's try and stick to the report. Any other comments, Councillor Spears? No. Okay, Councillor Steinbank.
Thank you, Provost. I think I've got a few questions for Mr. Benny, so I can ask all of them at the same time or one at a time, depending on your preference, Malcolm.
Let's go one at a time. My brain cells don't always take on the big ones.
Yeah, no problem at all. So obviously we've heard a lot about the credible work being done by voluntary organisations across the district, and I'd like to agree with the comments made earlier by my ward colleague Councillor Binney. I know both of us are away to see the panto at the Tamford Hill Community Hub and looking forward to it on Saturday. A lot of these groups have worked incredibly hard as well, the creative groups across our district. However, again, having correspondence quite similar to that expressed by Councillor McCabe and Councillor Spears just there. They are very concerned about this Christmas, but especially their long-term future. Especially with this uncertainty that these organisations have expressed to councillors, how can we expedite our work with organisations to secure concrete venue plans going into next Christmas? Obviously, we've got within the report plans till June. I'm just wondering how we'll be coordinating going on in securing venues for these groups, especially for next Christmas.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Bennett.
Through you, Provost, could I bring in Leslie O'Hare to answer that question, please?
Okay, Leslie.
Through you, Provost. We now have relocated all the groups right up until next Christmas, with the exception of the Bohemians. Obviously, this report was written some weeks ago, and we've been continually updating it as work has been ongoing. I'm not aware of any groups say, other than the Bohemians, that are facing problems in terms of Christmas performances. Indeed, we don't have any bookings. We didn't have any bookings in the diary for FTH for next December because we were planning originally to have our own pantomime there. That obviously won't be happening now. But obviously, if any elected members have had contact from any voluntary groups that have concerns, please do pass those comments or queries on to me, and I'll make sure that we can respond to them as quickly as possible.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. Councillor Steinbank.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leslie, for that. My next question, and I thank yourself and Malcolm for sending me the statistics and the capacity of Larbert and St Mungo's to replacing several of the performances. Obviously, it says within the report, schools will only be available outside of the school term, as noted in the report. Have we done any work to assess whether these venues might be available for evening performances?
Mr Benny, is that you or Mr Naylor?
Happy to pass over to Leslie again, if that's okay.
Okay, Leslie.
Yeah, the difficulty of having any one-off evening performances, it is possible to schedule those into school subject to the diary availability. The big challenge in terms of availability is to have a week-long run in a school with because the auditoria, the halls are used for other purposes. I mean, indeed, we were at Larbert a few weeks ago, Larbert High, and the main auditorium by day is used for badminton, then it's changed over to use as a dining hall. So it's not possible to do a week-long run in any of our school facilities.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steinbank.
No problem. And I think that goes to show the crucial capacity in the Grangemouth and Bowness town halls also mentioned in the reports. So how assured can those organisations that run and perform in the Grangemouth and Bowness town halls be assured of their long-term future, as they're clearly strategically vital community facilities right now? Hopefully just for the short term to absorb the gaps currently in the system, but clearly will be crucial in the long term. How assured can the groups be in their long-term future?
Malcolm, is that you or? Okay.
Through you, Provost. I think the short answer is that a report was brought to the executive earlier this month that indicated a phased sort of approach to the town halls, and clearly a consultation's ongoing with regard to that, and a decision will come before elected members next year. It's not one that I can make on behalf of elected members right now.
Thank you, Malcolm. That's me, Provost.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Kerr, for Sunny Tenerife.
Thank you, Provost. Just lean on for Councillor Steinbank's question, and probably what Malcolm's just said. We agreed at the last executive meeting that the town halls through our amendment would be part of the core. So the core, there's non-core and core, so they will be part of the core in the SPR. So, and leading on for Councillor Steinbank, probably for Leslie, I understand with regards to not being able to get the schools for a full week, but would it be possible for a group to get it maybe a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so there's a sustainable period of time?
Leslie, do you want to take that one?
I suppose I'd need to know what the specific group was. As far as I'm aware, we have been able to accommodate everybody in Grangemouth and Bowness, with the exception of next year's Falkirk Opera performance, where we have secured a week-long booking in the school holidays. So I'd need to know which particular group was looking for a Thursday through Sunday, and I would then need to work with colleagues in either Class 98 or in the CAT schools to see whether that run was possible. It would certainly be partly dependent on dates, but also the issues that I said earlier about school halls being used during the day for a raft of other purposes. So if you can give me the specific example, and I could maybe enter into a conversation with that particular group.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Kerr?
Just to say, Leslie, there's no other group. It was just if I'm sure if there was a group who required a 3 or a 4 day period, that is just giving them the opportunity to come and speak. But there's no a specific group or a specific time, and I'm sure our schools would be willing to work with the council with regards to availability of the space. So thanks for the. I just didn't want people to think that that was off the table, and if it's possible through communication, that might be possible in the future, Provost. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Bundy?
Thank you, Provost. The #1 strategic aim of the Council is to support stronger and healthier communities. And I think we can all agree that the voluntary arts sector plays a key role in making our community stronger and healthier. So when we're talking about supporting the voluntary arts sector, I was a little bit bemused by point 1.2 in the report, which says that it has a secondary link to the strategic priority of supporting stronger and healthier communities. I think it should be at the forefront of the Council's mind when putting these reports together, that the strategic priorities of the Council should be at the forefront of every report. So I was just wondering if Malcolm or anyone else could explain why it's only a secondary link in this report. Thank you.
Mr. Bailey?
Through you, Provost. My view about the report is why is this report here? It's here because there was a requirement from a financial sustainability point of view to close the Falkirk Town Hall, and the impact of that was that there was a disruption to local groups. So that's why there's a suggested primary link there to financial sustainability, and then the secondary link is more that I'm saying the next most important aspect that this report links to is the stronger communities, but there's no kind of overly stated position on that. This report clearly also supports local groups to help sustain good, strong local communities. So in a sense, I'm trying to show that it links to two parts of the council plan rather than just simply one.
Thank you. Councillor Bundy?
Thank you, Malcolm. I just raised that because when you read the report, it's clear to see that giving this support is to try and make our community stronger and healthier. So I think it is of equal importance in the report. And I think that we, as elected members, we are elected to serve our communities and want to empower them, and it should be our priority at everything that we look at. So it was just, yeah, it brought an eyebrow. It raised an eyebrow when I read it, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Provost, thank you. Earlier today, we were alerted to the importance of understanding the context that has led us to the current situation we're facing as a council. It's especially important to be aware of the past decisions made by the council. The fact remains that the decision taken in September is one of the most difficult we will have to have made as a body, but it must be considered within the context that decisions in the past are currently impacting on these voluntary organisations and arts groups who are using a facility that could be considered not fit for purpose. Obviously, that leads us to today's report. Officers have done remarkably well to get us to the position with these voluntary groups and other arts groups that are using the town hall to get them relocated. Although it's not an optimal position, it's good to see the progress being made with organisations across to relocate them to various facilities in the communities across the district. As mentioned by Councillor Garner, the delegation of authority to officers over the financial support is a sensible approach and allows flexibility and potential further sustainability for the organisations and groups impacted by these changes. I just wanted to note on the long-term comment that was made by Councillor Steinbach, and not to potentially reopen the debate, but the long-term vision of this council, I would suppose, would be, given the decisions that have been made, is to see a brand new fit for purpose state-of-the-art facility. And that would be what I would think this council would want to see for the future sustainability of these groups. So yeah, happy to second the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Redmond.
Yep, thanks. If we could just go to page 83. I know it was mentioned that we found alternative venues for all the leases except for Bohemians. So I was just wanting to check Dance Streams, Jenny Dugan Dance and Stenhouse Muir Dance. They have definitely been found places to go, and if so, where have they went?
Okay, Leslie, you want to take that one?
Yes, through you, Provost. Unfortunately, we are struggling to contact these groups. We've put out a number of calls to the groups to find out what their requirements are, and to see whether Bowness or Grangemouth is suitable. We're continuing to try and contact them, and we'll continue to keep trying to contact them. But I'm not aware that they have relocated out they certainly haven't relocated to Grangemouth or Bowness, but we're continuing to reach out to them.
Right, okay, thanks. And then just back to page 82. Obviously we've got capacity at both Grangemouth and Bowness town halls, relatively busy venues. To date, this has had no impact on our ability to relocate Falkirk Town Hall leases. It's noted that schools are the only available during the school holidays. So, you know, we've got a lot of places, leases here, we relocated or not relocated, and they're relocated, and it might look successful that, they've been relocated on this sheet, but what capacity are they running at these venues? You know, if we're putting on 10 shows a year at the Falkirk Town Hall, now they've been relocated to Larbert High School, are they only putting on 2 shows? Are they only putting on 3 shows? Is there any, what sort of capacity are they running at, if that makes sense?
Leslie?
Yeah, I mean, well, all our halls have less capacity than FTH. FTH has 584 seats. Larbert can accommodate 550. Grangemouth and Bowness are both under 400.
Sorry, maybe I've not been clear. I was meaning if they were putting on 10 shows a year at Falkirk Town Hall, because Falkirk Town Hall is available more than what Bowness and Grangemouth Town Hall are. With the availability at Grangemouth Town Hall, how many shows are they now able to put on?
Broadly the same runs. So if we took Big Bad Wolf for an example, they booked for January 2024, and they will be having the same length of run, excuse me, as they would have had at Falkirk Town Hall. I'm not aware of any groups that have had to shorten their runs in order to be accommodated in Grangemouth or Bowness, or indeed any of the other locations. But Grangemouth and Bowness, principally, they are fairly busy venues, but we have been able to accommodate all the lets that are listed without any compromising of the length of run.
Any other questions, Councillor Redmond?
I just one more. Just underneath that paragraph, it was talking about the Falkirk Town Hall was £3,675, including stewarding and technical costs to hire. Larbert High School, excluding stewarding and technical costs, is £6,410 to hire. So it's nearly double the cost, and they're not getting the stewarding and the technical help that we got. So obviously it seems really concerning. Like, are they able to afford this, the companies?
Leslie?
Yeah, through you, Provost. Yeah, that's what the £10,000 pot of money is there to do, is to be able to meet any gap in finances caused by the relocation. Most of the relocations, certainly to Grangemouth and Bowness, we're not anticipating really very much in terms of financial disadvantage to the groups. However, the facilities management costs for both the Class 98 and CAT schools are significantly higher than any council venues. And so, as I say, that's what this £10,000 pot is there to do, is to meet that funding gap. Certainly in the first year, I think we would then have to really reconsider how affordable the schools are for use going forward, bearing in mind the point that the elected members just made.
Cheers. And then just finally, obviously we've got these figures here, but it doesn't say, it just says 3,675. Was that for the year? Was that per show? Was it for a month's hire? So the £6,410 at Larbert High, how often do they need to pay that?
Through you, Provost, that the figure quoted for Falkirk Town Hall was for the full week's run of Falkirk Opera earlier this year, April this year, and the comparative cost for Larbert High School is for the same length of run.
So you're saying it costs £6,410 to hire it for the week? Is that
Hire
correct?
it for the week. Yeah.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. That's. Thank you. That's all my questions. Cheers.
Okay, any other questions?
Just a point of clarification regarding Grangemouth and Bowness Town Halls. There's been various seating numbers quoted this morning, but when they transferred the mobile seating from Falkirk Town Hall, once it's demolished, that seating will greatly improve. For instance, in Grangemouth Town Hall, so it would make it a very, very good venue. And also, instead of maintaining everything as the Falkirk centralist type idea, we're moving around the district, and people in other areas will have greater availability to go to these shows.
Councillor Meikle-John.
Thank you, Provost. I would just want to thank the staff, the work that they've done to actually be able to accommodate all of those. It's not been an easy job, and I know how disappointed the various organisations were at us having to make the decision around the closure of the town hall. But I think some of that has been vindicated with the recent issues around the heating system, and there's maybe a bit of a better understanding of why critically we had to take the decision we did. It wasn't one we wanted to take, it was one we had to take, if nothing else, to be able to maintain a reputation for arts within the Falkirk area, because we cannot afford to have a venue that fails as the actual utilities and facilities fail. Yeah, but we are also making a contribution to that, and a significant contribution because of the savings that are being made. So we are paying the additional costs that the various venues, various organisations would incur by using alternative venues. And there is also, as has been said by Councillor Spears, the ability to take what the infrastructure that's in Falkirk Town Hall and relocate that to other venues, and be able to offer something by way of a bit of a different experience to might be far more accessible to people in their individual localities. And I think that's something that should be commended. And hopefully, when we do get a new town hall, some of that will continue within these localities and bring some benefits to the communities, and indeed some economic benefits as well. So I think while the decision's been a difficult one, there's been a lot of work done. It's really positive to see the engagement, and from what I've picked up, from those that have contacted me that people are getting quite excited about designing something different and moving forward. And I think that's a huge endorsement to the council area as a whole and individual communities in particular. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Meikle-John. Councillor Patrick.
Yes, thank you. It was really just sort of a wee bit concerned about what is going to happen in the future. I mean, I'm really quite happy that we seem to have managed to locate groups. I know there's quite a concern about that, and locate them within Falkirk district. One of the groups had spoken to me and they were explaining the costs if they had gone to the Mariner Centre, to the McRobert, for example. And I'm just concerned that in future years we don't get to a situation where, because we're not prepared to kind of meet that gap in costs, that we end up losing these groups to perhaps Stirling or Cumbernauld. So it's really important we keep them within Falkirk district until we hopefully have a suitable venue that they can then use. So I think we do have to look at future funding as well to make sure that this is not just solving their problem for 1 year, that they will feel that they can continue to run their productions for the years to come until we have another suitable venue in place. So we do need to look at that ongoing funding. Seemed to me, I think that Class 98 costs and in CATS as well were quite similar to McRobert. So I'd rather we helped them stay within Falkirk than that money gets paid out with our area. So I think that's something we need to take into account as the production, they decide what productions are going to hold next after the ones we're talking about.
Thanks very much, Councillor Patrick. I'm sure that's been very well noted. It's been quite a good debate. So can we now agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Bye. Agenda item 8 is the budget report. We'll try and get through this one, then we'll break for lunch. So it's a report by Mrs. Templeman. So would you like to speak to your report, please? Pages 86 to 99.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. So the report that's in front of you today is just a roundup of some updates that would impact on the financial strategy report that I had presented to Council in September this year. And I'll just take you through the various sections and provide a bit of a summary. Section 4.4 of the report provides an update on the Council's 4-year budget gap, and you'll see that it's shifted marginally since the September paper. It's currently sitting at around 67 million. Members should be absolutely clear that this figure will shift further in the coming months, and there remains a number of unknowns and issues that will impact on it, including pay awards, energy, inflation, interest rates. All of these areas will have an impact on the projections. In addition, as Councillor Spears referred to earlier on, a key date for the Council's budget is tomorrow, the 15th of December, when the Scottish Government will announce the budget settlement for 23-24. And as I'd set out in the financial strategy, that's the main source of funding for the Council, and tomorrow's a really critical date in the Council's budget setting process. The table in paragraph 4.1.4 shows the progress to date from services in identifying savings options, some of which are operational and some of which will require member approval. However, it's evident that even if all these savings were taken, the remaining gap would be around 40 million at this point. So there still remains a significant amount of work to do, and officers are continuing to identify and work up options. Apologies, I was just double checking my camera. My camera is on. I'm not sure if everyone can see me though. Sections 4.2, 4.3 and 4.4 of the report summarise some of the recent information from the Scottish and UK governments. However, as I've already noted, tomorrow's announcement is really the kind of key piece of information that we need. 4.5 of the report covers service concessions, and in our case that relates to the accounting arrangements for Class 98 and the NPDO school contracts, so essentially covering the Council's high schools. The Scottish Government's issued guidance that allows the Council to change the accounting treatment of these contracts, and that will have a significant impact on the Council's budget setting process. Service concessions won't address the structural deficit that the Council has. It won't reduce the £67 million gap previously discussed, but it could allow us to reprofile that gap. and there will be a cost associated with that, so we'll have to ensure that the arrangements are used in a very prudent way. We will need to bring a full report back to Council for approval if we choose to use service concessions. And I suppose I would just flag up that this is a really complicated exercise. We are working our way through the information received from our Treasury advisors, and we've set up a briefing for members on the 6th of February, so in advance of further consideration by the Council, and we'll have all the details that we need at that point to be able to give members a really clear picture of what the service concessions means. Section 4.6 of the report refers to proposed work on the target operating model and notes that this work's been deferred until after the budget setting exercise in March. And section 4.8 of the report covers zero-based budgeting, providing some background and noting a proposed approach in paragraph 4.8.7. The report tries to emphasise that zero-based budgeting is a tool that can be used by services as part of any review that they undertake. And given the Council's financial position, every option and technique that's available to us has to be considered for use. There are a number of operational reviews that services are planning, and where ZBB is appropriate, Finance and the Programme Management Office will support this work and approach. But it is important to note that ZBB is a useful methodology, but it won't stop the requirement to take difficult decisions. And ultimately, as I've said at paragraph 4.8.6, savings will still have to come from staffing and property, as that is where the majority of our budget is spent. 4.9 of the report notes that a high-level budget consultation is planned, and it's anticipated that that will be live shortly. The consultation will provide information on how the Council's budget works, and it will ask questions on spend priorities, for example, and the output from that work will be presented to the Finance Strategy Group and to the Council as part of the budget papers. And finally, section 4.10 provides an update in respect to the housing budget for both rent setting and investment. Ordinarily, these budgets would come to the January Council for approval. However, the Scottish Government is expected to make an announcement on rent freezes on the 14th of January. So we are proposing that the January Council date is moved to February, and there's a recommendation on that included in this report. Thank you, Provost. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Mrs Templeman. Councillor Meikle-John, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Provost. Yes, I do, Provost, and I will be moving the recommendations in the paper. The budget report emphasises the very challenging position that the Council's in, and I'm still not convinced that everyone around this table appreciates the seriousness of that situation. We have a £67 million gap over the next 4 years, 50% of that gap having to be found in this year, and we have a legal duty to deliver a balanced budget. The Scottish Government will have the first stage of its budget announcement tomorrow. However, it has to be recognised that we will not know the full outcome of that position until stage 3, which is a bit further down the line. It is, however, unlikely there will be any major movements from the announcement to tomorrow towards stage 3. Therefore, it's important that we do plan accordingly for that budget position. Difficult decisions will require to be made, some of which have already had before us at the Executive last week, with more to come. None of us came into this role to deliver service cuts. But our budget gap, while compounded because of COVID, Brexit and the cost of living crisis, and indeed historical issues due to lack of willingness in the past of a Labour-led administration not wanting to take hard decisions, and the reliance on cash reserves, which makes it all more acute right now. We are now in a position where we are having to make difficult decisions, not because we want to, but because we have to, in order to preserve key services to ensure that we can support our most vulnerable citizens. It's easy to criticise and to look to blame the Scottish Government, reality being that they too have a finite budget which they have to provide a balanced budget for. Just before we have the £2 billion underspend raised, I would highlight that it's made up of cash of the cash reserve that the Scottish Parliament is legitimately allowed to hold for emergencies, as well as underspends related to the delays in the provision of goods and services due to workforce and supply issues, just the same as this council, other councils and many other organisations across the country. A significant portion of that £2 billion is made up of non-cash elements that cannot be spent on public services. Clearly, if anyone thinks that any funding is being held back, they don't understand how the Scottish Parliament finances work. That said, we do need to make sure that the voice of local government is heard and the importance of the services we deliver. The Save Our Services campaign through COSLA was backed across the political sphere to ensure that collectively we do just that. However, it is important that we do not restrict the lobbying to Scottish Government, and through COSLA our case has also to be made to the UK Government. As we've seen with the recent spending review, the additional funding that has come to Scotland by way of uplift will barely cover the costs of inflation. We must recognise that councils of length and breadth of the country in similar positions, all seeking additional funding. And while we continue to press for additional funding, we must be realistic on how achievable that might be and plan accordingly. After a very protracted process, we now have agreement and guidance on the fiscal flexibilities, which will assist in helping to manage our budget, but will not negate the fact that we still have to find 67 million and have a financial strategy that will provide sustainability going forward. And that will only be able to if that only with that financial sustainability will that give us the ability to look at investment. And until we reach that point, we should not be considering any additional spend. In fact, spend should be able to be aligned directly with the Council's and Falkirk Plan priorities. And we should be mindful that Audit Scotland will be continuing to look closely at budget planning as they prepare to come back to follow up next year. I'm therefore happy to move the recommendations in the report and indeed accept the amendment put forward by Councillor Hannah, as Falkirk Council, like every other council in the country, signed up to the Save Our Services campaign at COSLA, and will continue to press both governments for additional funding to ensure that the services that we deliver are critical to our communities are able to be sustained going forward. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Meikle-John. Do you have a seconder?
Happy to second, reserving the right.
Okay, thank you. Amendment.
We had an amendment which the council leader has magnanimously accepted as part of the recommendations. I don't know if you want me to speak a little more about it at the moment or to reserve the right till later.
Probably later on once we open up for discussion.
Okay.
And Councillor Kerr, do you have an amendment?
No amendment, but we support the amendment put forward by the Labour Group.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry.
SNP.
Thank you. Councillor Spears, do you have an amendment?
I will pass you on to my deputy leader, who has.
Councillor McKeep.
Thanks, Provost. Councillor Spears. Yeah, we do have an amendment. Accept the SNP motion and the addendum of the Labour amendment. But all we would like to do is at 2.12 to change that from agree the council meeting arranged for January will take place in February, to have that replaced with agree that council meet on January and February on dates to be arranged, given the critical nature of the council's budget discussions.
Provost, could I ask a question in relation to that?
Okay.
From officers, to whether or not we would have relevant information to take to council for decision. I appreciate that work will be ongoing, particularly during the Christmas recess. Briefings will be required, but as to whether or not there is going to be enough information available for council to take decisions on at that time, recognising that we will not have the outcome of the Scottish Government's housing rents legislation until the 14th of January.
Okay, Mr. Moody.
I think that's maybe better to Ms Templeman, just in relation to the nature of the decisions to be made and the information that's likely to be available.
Ms Templeman.
Thank you, Provost. I think the January report to Council is traditionally used for the housing reports, which, as we've said, will not be available because of the timing of the various announcements. That leaves me thinking, well, what decisions would we be bringing to Council in January relating to the general fund? And I think, as Councillor Meikle-Johns raised, we'll still be working our way through the government's financial settlement. We have said that we'll bring a paper to executive outlining the financial settlement, where it's got to and what we think the impact for the council will be. So I don't think we will have any decisions available at that point to bring to members in January.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McCabe. Does that help you at all?
It does indeed, Provost. Thank you for the clarification. And just having heard what has been said, I need to seek my group leader's approval here, but I would suggest that we will probably withdraw the amendment. However, it does open up some issues that we will refer to in the following debate.
Councillor Spears.
I really want to just ask some questions at this stage.
Well, we'll open up for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Just very shortly. Okay, so we'll now. Yes, Councillor McCabe, can you just confirm your amendment has been withdrawn, please?
That's exactly what I'd said. I was just seeking agreement. I was digging Councillor Spears in the ribs to say agree to withdrawing the amendment.
I agree.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll now open up for discussion. So if anybody's got any questions, Councillor Spears.
Right, thank you. The Chief Executive may remember a question I asked him at the Executive Committee meeting regarding this very question, how our COSLA representatives were lobbying COSLA to fight on our behalf regarding the Save Our Services campaign. Do we have a report back from that, or are we expected to get a report from our COSLA representatives?
Mr. Laurie, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I'm not anticipating a report back. I mean, I think that the work being done by COSLA is very visible for all to see. It's very energetic, it's very high profile, it's very focused on the differences and the value that local services bring, and it's available for all to see.
That would be great if they would explain that to us then, exactly where their focus is, what they're delivering, and are they reporting back to this council?
Provost, I just, as I attend the leaders' meetings, just say that there's emails that have been out to all elected members in relation to the Save Our Services campaign, that is supported by the COSLA family across the political divide, and that I would refer Councillor Spears to that. That there's a joined up approach, and doing it as a collective has far greater impact than doing it as an individual council.
Thank you for that.
Can I ask then that they're resent to me, because in my present recollection I cannot remember them.
Councillor Spears, they came directly from COSLA themselves, not internally. They came from COSLA and they did go to all members.
But then you're missing the very point I'm trying to make. We have COSLA representatives within this council. We want them to report back to us. You know, we've elected them to represent us regarding this, and we'd like to hear back from them.
Councillor Spears, it's a national campaign that we are part of, and therefore it's not for an individual, it is a collective campaign, and that is very, very visible in the public domain. And anything that you would wish to see should be able to get from that. There's regular updates. There was another one today indicating an area specific. So I would be saying nothing different than has been presented in the public eye.
Sorry, maybe people are under the misillusion that we want a local representative to speak for us locally and not just become a part of a national voice. It helps to be part of a national voice, but we want to really know what our COSLA representatives are doing to help us here in Falkirk Council.
Thanks very much, Councillor Spears. I think you've made that point loud and clear. Go to Councillor Aegis next.
Thanks, Provost. Just with questions. The Labour group introduced zero-based budgeting a few years back, and I have to say there was a reluctance in various quarters to implement this. About a year after it was passed in the budget, a report came forward identifying 2 areas where zero-based budget could be implemented, namely education and transport. And this was predicting a saving from zero-based budgeting of 1.7 million a year. 2 officers were employed to work on zero-based budgeting. However, I'm not sure this was a very successful thing either. I think they moved on, but I don't know if there were reasons for them. They weren't getting help or whatever else. So basically, my first question is, why was this not progressed faster initially, and why were the people who were employed not replaced when they moved on?
Okay, thanks for that first question. Ms Templeman, would you like to answer that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Provost, and thank you, Councillor Aitchison, for the question. So I think one of the, if I take the first point, the second point rather, about the 2 people that have moved on, and they were part of the Programme Management Office, and one of them has only very recently moved on. They were on temporary contracts and found positions elsewhere. I think we have. I think as a council, we're still sort of trying to work our way through this approach. I think we had criticism from our auditors that the approach that we've taken to date for zero-based budgeting has sort of resulted in double counting. And I think we have to recognise that ourselves, because what we've done is we are, for example, a council area has been reviewing its service provision. We have then overlaid that with a zero-based budgeting ask. And I think it can be done in that way. It has the zero-based budgeting, when we use it, has to be the approach we take to that review. So what I'm trying to do, and I suppose what I'm flagging to members and asking for members support with, is to look at refreshing our approach to zero-based budgeting and to how we support services to do their service reviews. Zero-based budgeting won't work in every area, and it can be a very resource intensive and expensive way to approach it if we get external support to do it. So it's really looking at this point in time, effectively every area of the council, everything we do and deliver is going through a review process. And what we're really trying to do is look at the most effective way to tackle each area that we're reviewing. And in some cases that will be zero-based budgeting. What I think we haven't done, and I don't think we would recommend at this point, is a full zero-based budgeting exercise across the whole council, because I don't think we could resource that either financially or through officer resource.
Okay, thank you. Do you have another question, Councillor Aitchison?
Yeah, you've answered it slightly, Amanda, but I'm just going to ask you all the same. We're reading paragraph 4.6 that the council has begun to explore a target model operating system, which doesn't seem a great deal different from zero-based budgeting, from what I can see. There was mention of zero-based budgeting being labour intensive, yet the same is mentioned in the report about target operating model. So is this going to work hand in hand, or is one going to replace the other? Are we going to see zero-based budgeting slowly disappearing, or will it basically go, or will we have reports back on what work's been done through zero-based budgeting and target operating model?
Ms Templeman?
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor Aitchison. I think the target operating model and the zero-based budgeting approaches can really complement each other, because the target operating model, is looking at the strategic direction of the council. It's looking at what we have to, where we have to be, what we will look like in a number of years' time, and what changes we therefore have to make. And the zero-based budgeting approach is more operational in terms of looking at the different areas that need to be reviewed and taking an approach to identifying savings within those areas. So I think the two approaches can complement each other. I have flagged up in both cases that they're resource intensive, because I am very aware of the pressures on the council and on council officers. At this point in time, you know, council and executive have considered a lot of big chunky reports, many of which will be doing some of that, or be doing a lot of that strategic thinking, but also that kind of operational review of service areas. That work is happening. And I think as well, you know, we have to recognise that we're all very, very focused on the budget and the financial sustainability issues. So I just wanted to sort of be quite honest with members about some of the sort of limitations in terms of the resource that we have available for these exercises. But I think they're still valid exercises, and we need to think, officers need to think about how we can make sure we're resourcing them appropriately and moving them forward. And I would anticipate future reports to council that would provide updates on those areas.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms Templeman. Councillor Aitchison, any other questions on that?
Just one final question, Provost. Thank you. I'm not sure if it would be for Amanda or not. Just like to ask the decision on whether or not to make the change to target operation model would come to executive or council. After all, it was the council budget decision to implement zero-based budgeting.
Okay, Ms Templeman. Hello, Amanda. Oh, you're
apologies, my Wi-Fi connection just dropped out, so I didn't hear any of Councillor Aitchison's last question.
Sorry.
Okay,
just like to ask the decision on whether or not to make the change to target operating model would come to an executive or council meeting. After all, it was a council budget decision to implement zero-based budget, or is it just a system you would implement on your own?
Okay, Ms Templeman. I think you've dropped out again. Mr Laurie will answer that one.
Thank you, Provost. I would anticipate that, given this runs alongside the financial strategy reports, that would come back into the council in due course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Aitchison. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Provost. I just want to thank Amanda, if she can hear me, and even if she can't, it will be at least recorded, for her report here. It, as usual, is very, very clear, if a very worrying report. And I also would thank again the council leader for accepting our amendment to support the COSLA campaign. I'm a little concerned at some of the comments that have been made, though, and I'd like to just deal with each of them in turn. There's been a suggestion that not everyone around this room understands the seriousness of our financial situation. I can say that I think it's fairly certain in our corner of the woods that we understand the seriousness of the financial situation. We are not unclear about where the problem lies. However, it's also been suggested that somehow this financial crisis that Falkirk Council is in is somehow a result of COVID, Brexit, the cost of living crisis, and a previous Labour administration. I find it really difficult to see the evidence, certainly for the latter, but I'll be very happy to look at evidence. I was not in any previous Labour administration, so I cannot make direct comment from my own experience, but I'd really love to see the evidence that somehow those decisions impact on today's financial situation. It's also been suggested that some of us don't understand how the Scottish Government finances work. I think the thing is that we have been, some of us are perhaps quite new to the Council, and some of us have had a steep learning curve. But we have actually been digging in, as Amanda, if she can hear me, will know, we're forever asking questions, asking for briefings, asking for training, because we do want to understand both the Falkirk Council finances and how they work, and the Scottish Government finances and how they work. Now, in the case of the Scottish Government finances, what I do understand is that when Holyrood was last under a Labour administration, 33% of the Scottish budget went to local authorities. Currently, the level is 24% of the Scottish budget going to local authorities. Personally, I think in terms of where the fault lies, those figures speak for themselves. In relation to the COSLA campaign, I would simply say that the COSLA campaign also has recognised that it's the Scottish Government's spending plans as they stand that will result in reductions in council services and loss of jobs. It's not COVID, it's not Brexit, it's not the cost of living crisis, and it's not a previous Labour administration. Amanda raised the issue that tomorrow's decision is very, very important, the announcement from the Scottish Government of the budget. We're all well aware of that, and I hope that we're able to get, even though we're not going to have a report brought to a meeting, I would really appreciate if it's possible for officers to provide an early briefing on the implications of the Scottish budget decision on our local council, so that we can enjoy our Christmas break, digging into the information about that we're going to have to deal with in the new year. So I would appreciate early briefings, and I know that officers will do that as soon as they can.
Thanks, Councillor Hannah. And I know there's other people who want to ask some questions, but I think we'll take this opportunity to break for lunch and back here at, say, 2 o'clock.